Today we see some familiar faces in some familiar places, but with some pretty creepy chases.
How you get so big that you food of this kind?
Hello everyone, here today to talk to you about the first issue of Tales from Vader's Castle, which is a mini-series spin-off of Star Wars Adventures. If you're not familiar with Star Wars Adventures, it's a fantastic comic line being done right now by IDW Comics. You may know a lot of the Star Wars comics are actually published by Marvel, but IDW has been doing this great thing with Star Wars Adventures. I did review the first volume if you want to check that out. I haven't kept up with the series as much as I should have, but it's been really fun. They basically do all these little anthology stories, and I mean, the title Star Wars Adventures says it all. It's really about just adventure and excitement. Just don't tell Yoda, because he might put you in timeout. This is a spooky spin-off for the Halloween season. Tales from Vader's Castle follows a hopefully familiar face. If you're familiar with this channel, then you'll know the name. Lena Graff. Lena Graff is serving in the Rebel Alliance. We previously had seen her in the Star Wars Adventures in Wild Space series by Cavan and Tom Huddleston. It's a great series. I have reviews of the whole series if you guys want to check that out. Here we see a grown-up Lena leading a new crew of interesting characters, and at her side is the ever-cantankerous Crater, who is another character from Adventures in Wild Space if you are familiar with that series. Lena's story, as I understand it, is the through line of the miniseries. She and her crew are lost in space, and they crash land on Mustafar and happen upon Darth Vader's castle. Along the way, they are sharing ghost stories, basically, and each issue will have a different ghost story alongside of the main issue, which is being stuck by Darth Vader's castle. This series is being written by Cavan, as I said, one of the two authors of Adventures in Wild Space. He's also written a lot for Star Wars Adventures in general. He wrote in the Star Wars A Certain Point of View book. We've actually interviewed him here before on the channel, so make sure you check that out as well. He's back writing some of his favorite characters. In this particular issue, we also have the art styles of Derek Charm and Chris Fenoglio. And I must say, the cover art on this entire series is absolutely stellar. The art for that is done by Francesco Francavilla. So as I said, this issue deals with Lena and company crash landing on Mustafar, having to deal with all of that pesky lava that has a habit of getting everywhere on the planet. Meanwhile, Crater is making them all feel better by telling them a ghost story from something that he had heard from one of his friends. His friend, of course, being Chopper from Star Wars Rebels. What we end up getting is a story between Kanan and Hera, because Khaenri'ah forever, guys. Khaenri'ah forever. And this story was just perfect between the two of them. I mean, they were bickering, they were bantering, terrible things are going on, and Kanan is more worried about how mad Hera's gonna be that he's breaking her ship than he is about the actual danger on the ship. It's just the dynamic between the two of them was great. From what I've been able to gain, this is kind of early-ish, the beginning of Rebels. Whether or not that takes place just before, just after, I don't know that they've officially settled on a placement yet, but it's pretty early on in terms of where the series takes place. Basically what happens is Kanan and Hera are looking for someone. They find that person's ship crashed, and when they're investigating the crash, some strange energy floats from the ship onto the ghost, and the ghost itself becomes haunted. I mean, talk about an ironic situation. How are you going to call the Ghostbusters when you really don't want to bust the ghost? But the tone of these stories is really fun. And the tone of the stories themselves is actually really accentuated by the artwork. So Charm is doing the artwork for the Lena Graff storyline. He kind of does this in this more kind of iconic art style. I'm really not good at art words, so I apologize. But it's kind of more simple shapes, and I mean that in a very good way. It looks very sleek, very cool, very stylish as they go on in their adventures, and then the Rebel story looks very different in art. It's more of a kind of what I would say is like a normal kind of cartoon look, but not like super exaggerated cartoons, but just like grounded in just enough realism, but also just enough kookiness. Almost kind of like a Scooby-Doo level of realism, I guess. And it really helps set the tone of where we were. Especially because in the one story, you know, we're on Mustafar with Vader's castle and we know bad stuff's gonna happen. In the other story, we can have a little bit more fun with it, right? We know how Rebels ends, and while the fates of some of those characters might not be particularly happy, we know everything's going to turn out fine in this particular comic. So as much as it's creepy and scary, we can also just kind of take a deep breath and have fun with it. More of these kind of like fun, rounded shapes where we're just kind of on this adventure, and then here where we even though we're having fun, we got to be a little bit more serious. You know, there's a little bit more edge to the drawing, if that makes sense. So I really appreciated not only the different art styles, but the way that the art styles themselves were different and what they actually contributed to the type of story that they were telling. Now, this is just the first issue of this series. This series is going to release every Wednesday in October in this Year of the Force 2018, with the final issue coming out on Halloween itself. Perfect series for this time of year. I highly encourage all of you to just get involved. There's a lot of really great talent involved in what's going on. I'm not a big horror person myself, so kind of like getting to experience horror in the context of Star Wars really kind of is my favorite way to celebrate Halloween. And if you like what you see with Vader's Castle, be sure to check out the main line of Star Wars Adventures, because like I said, these are just a lot of fun. They cover all kinds of crazy stories, all kinds of characters, getting to see all sorts of side things that you always really wanted to see, but you're just never really going to find in, you know, a major movie, because they don't necessarily have the time to do these really cool side stories. Make sure you keep it here for more information on this series going forward. If you're not already, please follow us on Twitter at Port Haven Forums and visit port-haven.com for even more. Until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.